Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be covering Guinsoo'S Rageblade, and the idea behind covering this item is I want to give an accurate top lane tier list of which champions can utilize this item well. So Z is the best in slot tier, S is strong tier, A is good, B works, C is bad, and D, which is where majority of the champions are going to lie, is terrible. This is if they just don't really have any synergies with the item. Some of these champions can utilize attack speed, but then lack like the AP ratios or the AD ratios to really back it up. They also might want survivability or value a dash or value just a different stat instead of what the item provides, which is on hit, ramping damage, and armor and magic resist pen. So there are a couple of champions which I've picked out here, which I think there is a level of viability on the item. So to begin with, Jax is the first champ. Jax, this is his third most built mythic at the moment. It performs relatively poorly, but as he has both attacks, well, he can utilize attack speed, he can utilize magic damage, AP, he can also utilize armor, plus the on-hit can work on him, and the armor magic resist pen. He can utilize the item. You do have to itemize a decent amount of on-hit to really get a lot of use out of Guinsoo'S. Things like Nash's, Wits, Bork all pair quite nicely with the item. Other things which pair nicely with the item are things with crit, which can convert into on-hit, as the item has a relatively nice on-hit conversion multiplier. Gnar is a B tier champion with the item. Gnar used to have a build where he could go like an on-hit variant. You did want to stay relatively like a mini Gnar to get a lot of use out of this form. It allows him to ramp his passive, it allows him to just do a lot of damage, kite around. But once you turn into Mega Gnar, he loses a lot of the survivability tool, which he really needs. He also loses really just a lot of the range, which really gives this item a lot of value on Gnar, along with the W on hit, is lost through getting Mega. So where the item does have niche circumstances where it can work on Gnar, I would not recommend building this item, as things like Triforce have been recently buffed and function to a higher level. Teemo is a B tier champion with this item. Teemo can utilize Guinsoo'S. He can build things like Nash's. He can also build things like Wits End. Wits End works on a decent amount of high attack speed AP champions, as it provides them with magic resist, movement speed, and good on hit. Like Kayle is another example of a champion which can utilize Wits End quite nicely. Wits End paired with this item can work. He's still better off going things like Riftmaker, Liandry's. Items like this do have higher win rates and higher are built a larger amount of times, but it does work on him. He can utilize on-hit items, so that is the idea behind that. Udyr, a C-tier champion, he can kind of use it with his Q. He does have a decent amount of attack speed. As he's a melee champion, he loses a lot of value from it having no resists on it. But the armor and magic resist pen can help Udyr quite a lot with his split damage source, especially if you're going things like Bork on Udyr. Losing Prowlers does hurt AD Udyr, but you can kind of go an on-hit variant with this. If you're going AD, though, you're most likely going to go Triforce. If you're going AP, you're probably leaning more towards the Demonics and tankier route. Trundle is a C-tier champion with this item. He just has a strong attack speed scaler. When you're using this item with his W, he can chew through a lot of champions. He can also build a couple of on-hit items. He doesn't have any AP, well, past his ult, he doesn't really have any AP scale, he doesn't have any AP scalers past his ult, and his ult is a very small one at that. So you're losing value out of the AP on this item, but he can utilize the armor pen. He can also utilize the attack speed, the AD, and the ramping ramping on-hit on it. So that's why he's a C-tier champion. Volibear, also a C-tier champion. He can use Nash's too. He can also kind of use Guinsoo'S in that regard. A lot of these champions, if they use on-hit items, can utilize Guinsoo'S to a degree. Aurelia, for example, can go Bork. And because Aurelia can go Bork, Guinsoo'S becomes a viable option. Aurelia actually has decent AP ratios on both the E and the W. I don't know if she has one on the passive. She might, but I know that she has a good one on the W and the E. W providing ramping resists, which can be quite nice for Aurelia. So there is a level of viability there. you can, with the loss of Shield Bow, you tend to see more Stride Breaker and Triforce. Triforce, I'm pretty sure, is her go-to. You can also go Gore Drinker, but yeah, Guinsoo'S is an option. It can work on Aurelia. Quinn, not gonna see a lot of Guinsoo'S Quinn. Her AP ratios aren't great. Quinn's power can lie in a lot of lethality items at the moment. She can also utilize IE. But yeah, Youmuu's can kind of work in most games on Quinn. But yeah, Gale Force, IE, both function quite well on Quinn, especially with Gale Force being as strong as it is at the moment. Warwick is actually a champion which can utilize Guinsoo'S quite nicely. He does a lot of on-hit damage. He does a good split of damage as well. This is possibly one of Warwick's best items. We just don't see it a huge amount. Things like Jaxo, Divine Sundera, Triforce, Frostfire all work quite nicely on Warwick. There is a chance it is a strong item on Warwick, but with a lack of game size, I'm just going to consider it a relatively good item on Warwick. There are games where this item possibly is best in the slot. If you're going things like Bork, even Nash's, Ginsu's, Wit's End, all these items can work. Kraken could also work quite nicely with Guinsoo'S as well on Warwick, but overall, just a lot of on hit on this champion. Can utilize the attack speed and the double and the split of damage, plus the armor, Magic Resist Pen, quite nice on Warwick. Akshan got some AP ratios to kind of encourage the idea of building Guinsoo'S, but he is kind of more leaning towards Gale Force, IE, and Youmuu's at the moment. I do like IE Akshan as a build. I think if you go Collector into IE, into other options, things like LDR, RFC, Bloodthirster, Akshan has a relatively strong build. Storm Razor into Gale Force also does work quite nicely on Akshan at the moment, but Guinsoo'S still a relatively good item on Akshan. He can utilize the on-hit, he can utilize the passive, giving him the free hit passive on giving him his free hit passive where he can gain movements, I believe he can gain a shield out of it and a bit of AP damage. So yeah, there is a bit of value there. Kayle was kind of the idea. Kayle was the main one in the top lane where everyone was kind of considering this item might be broken her. Kayle still massively outperforms on things like Riftmaker. It can work on Kayle. It is a good option on Kayle if you're going maybe something like an AD variant of Kayle or like AD on hit variant of Kayle. You can utilize Guinsoo'S, but for the most part, you're mainly going to see Kayle go Riftmaker. It is her stronger item. If there are buffs towards Ginsu, which I wouldn't be surprised if we possibly see some Ginsu buffs, if Guinsoo'S does get buffed, then yeah, Kayle might be a lot stronger with the item, and it might overtake Riftmaker. Riftmaker is a relatively bad item at the moment, and yeah, it gives her another option if she wants to. There might be things with IE Kayle though. We don't see a lot of IE Kayle, but as her waves can critically strike, plus she does a decent amount of AD damage, there is options for IE Kayle. Vayne had AP buffs to her Q, 50% AP ratio slapped on that to make it up more of a viable option. It's a strong mythic on Vayne. It doesn't really compare to IE at the moment. IE is, I'm pretty sure, her best in slot. She can also go Youmuu's, but Essence Reaver, IE work quite nicely on Vayne, but if you're going more an on-hit direction, lots of attack speed within your build, things like Bork, Guinsoo'S, Kraken, all these items work quite nicely on Vayne. You can also go Shield Bow later on into that build. Shield Breaking gives you attack speed, and then finish it off with something like a GA. Runins is also a really strong item on this patch. Vayne can use Runins if she wants to go for a more wave clear heavy build. So there are options there. And Neeko. I'm going to put Neeko in the B tier. Neeko is another champion which was considered possibly really strong with Guinsoo'S, but it just isn't performing anywhere near as high as her AP mythics at the moment. Protobelt, Everfrost, Ludens, Liandry's, all of these just outperform Guinsoo'S a significant amount. If you're going a more like Nash's, if you're going Guinsoo'S, you tend to go Nash's first. It gives you the most power on your first item, and then you can itemize into something like Guinsoo'S and then Wits and Kraken. There are options there for Neeko. I wouldn't recommend going this build, but if you're looking to play something like Lethal Tempo, Neeko in the top lane, and you need a bit more of a split damage profile, then there are options there, definitely. Overall, Guinsoo'S not a particularly strong item, in my opinion. There are certain champions which can use it relatively strong. Varus, Kog'Maw, two examples of champions which can utilize the item very well. Because they have strong AP damage and AP ratios. They also have good options for on hit. So overall, these are two definite champions which can utilize the item more. But past that, it's a lot of Stormways and Galeforce at the moment. These items are both being nerfed, so maybe we'll start seeing a bit more Guinsoo'S come through. But in its current state, I don't really see Guinsoo'S being a strong kind of contender. But overall, those are my thoughts. Be interested to see if you find any if you guys have found any unique builds. But yeah, if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.